Our next speaker is Leandro R. Franco from IF USP.
So good morning. First of all, thanks Juarez and the organizers of the CINE for this opportunity to give this presentation. My name is Leandro. I'm doing my PhD under the supervision of Professor Kaline Coutinho. And today I will talk about the solvent effect on the electronic structure of mononuclear ruthenium aqua complex catalyst for water splitting. The main motivation to realize this kind of work probably is the development of new technologies based on the solar energy exploitation. And here the water splitting will be understood in the context of photosynthesis, okay? Concerning photosynthesis, what is photosynthesis? Plants do photosynthesis. So here on the right side, I show a schematic representation of the process involved in photosynthesis and the photosynthetic machinery located into the membranes in plants. So we have many important systems, photosystem 2 and photosystem 1, that are composed by chromophorus that can absorb the sunlight. And here we have a tetramanganese cluster that works as an oxidant agent. And so what basically happened here is the photosystem 2 will absorb the sunlight and will use the energy of the sun to promote an electron to the excited state. And then this electron uh, is, um, uh, is transferred by internal channels into the membrane to photosystem 1. And these electrons is used to the degradation of CO2 for the production of sugar, carbohydrates. Uh, Once the PS2 has oxidized, the tetramanganese cluster will donate one electron to regenerate the PS2 photosystem, and this will cause the oxidation of water molecule. We repeat this cycle 4 times, as I showed here in the Koch cycle, we will produce four protons, 4 electrons, and 1 oxygen molecule in a kind of oxygen evolution reaction. First, very important question is how to use the photosynthesis to produce energy. A nice way to do this is instead of to use the electrons that was excited here by PS2, is to combine the all electrons and all protons that were produced to generate hydrogen that is full. So by using 2 water molecules, we can produce 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen molecule. The other very important question is, do we know how to do this? The answer is yes, we know how to do this. In the periodic table, there are many atoms, that metal transition atoms that can be used for this purpose: manganese, ruthenium, cobalt, copper. And here I show some examples of ruthenium complex based on polypyridine. And this kind of system can do artificial photosynthesis. Just to illustrate how this can be done, here is a OOC based cell. That's a water oxidation catalyst based cell. Basically, we have 2 electrodes connected to one electrode. We have the photosystem that can be a ruthenium complex, and water oxidation catalyst is around the photosystem. And this is very similar to the natural system. The photosystem will absorb the sunlight, will create a separation charge state. And if this charge state has a large lifetime, the electron can be transferred to the electrode. And by the regeneration of the photosystem will happen the oxidation of water molecule. And again, the producing of 4 protons, 4 electrons that can be used for the hydrogen production. In my PhD, we have studied a model of ruthenium complex that I'm showing here. They are complex based on polypyridines, 2 bipyridines, 1 pyridine, and an extra water molecule in an octa-coordinated octahedral structure. So depending on the pH of the solution and depending on the oxidation state of the ruthenium, we can have other systems with different spin states, singlets, doublets, and triplets. So now I will show for you I'm going to focus on the methodology to show two very important results that we have obtained about the absorption of light by this kind of complex. Okay, so as this ruthenium complex is large system with 55 atoms, and we are studying this in solution. So sometimes we need to consider the first solvation shell, sometimes until the second solvation shell. We are adopting a sequential quantum mechanics, molecular mechanics method. The quantum mechanics part is done at density functional theory level, and the molecular mechanics simulation is done with Monte Carlo simulation using the DICE program that was implemented by Professor Calini. First, we have the optimization of the structure of each complex in vacuum. So then we do the parameterization. This is a very important step because if you go to the literature, you will not find parameters for non-bonded parameters for ruthenium coordinated with polyparadines and coordinating with water molecule. So it was necessary to develop new parameters for ruthenium, and we are working in the writing of a manuscript now about this. Following this sequence, we realized the Monte Carlo simulations in a very large cubic box, and we select some hundred of configurations of this simulation to calculate the properties. Here, we are calculating the ultraviolet visible spectra and the X-ray photoelectron spectra. The main difference between these two experimental techniques is that here in the first, we are exciting electrons from the valence, and here we are not exciting, but taking out the electrons from the core of the ruthenium. Okay, here I give some details about the calculations. We are using Gaussian 9 and the VAST code to the calculate of the binding energy and the excitations of the valence shell we are doing with the time-dependent density functional theory. And now I will show two results about the XPS and about the ultraviolet visible spectra. Okay? About the XPS, this is a work that we are doing in collaboration with many groups, in experimental and theoretical groups from chemistry, from the Chemistry Institute of USP and from the Uppsala University in Sweden. And here is the experimental result for binding energy and the electron sign for each complex. We are here, it's not possible to see this slide. Huh? The binding energy related to the ruthenium 3D, 5.5, and the binding energy related to the carbon 1s and ruthenium 3D, 3.5. As we see, we have an experimental trend. We can observe the peaks of each band. And here on the right, I show for you the theoretical results about the carbon and about the ruthenium. It's very interesting to observe in this result that considering the vacuum situation, we have an order here of these peaks. So it goes from the complex with charge +1, and then +2, +2, +2, and +3. So this follows the charge of the complex. When we go to the solution, this trend is different. So we have an experimental trend caused by solvent effects. And we are describing very well when we consider all the first solvation shell in the FT calculations. In this case, the consideration of the vacuum is not enough, and the consideration of the vacuum with the hydrogen, with the water molecules that makes hydrogen bonds is also, it's not enough to describe the experimental results. So it was necessary to consider the complex and all the first solvation shell with around 70 water molecules to describe the experimental trend. This is very important because here we help the experimentalists to understand what has happened in the reactions associated to the water splitting. And so we can help the experimentalists to know what kind of complex they are working. For example, what is the oxidation state in each step of the water splitting. A second result here, we are considering, I studied trying to understand the solvent effects on the absorption spectra, and the best result was obtained considering the complex by quantum mechanics, the first the water molecules that makes hydrogen bonds at quantum level 2, and the other molecules until the second solvation shell by electrostatic embedding. So it's I want to show for you that we are using two different approximations to calculate to take in account the solvent effects and to provide the best agreement with the experimental. So in this case, I show in black line, continuous black line, the experimental results for the ruthenium to aqua and ruthenium to hydroxyl. In colored sticks, I show for you the excitations. So here we selected 100 of configurations for each complex in solution, and we calculate the first 50 excitations. And so this is the conjunction of 100 configuration and 50 excitations for each one of them. And so we describe very well, and we give the information about what kind of absorption band is this. So this first band and the second is metal ligand charge transfer band. This means that we have the transfer of electrons from the metal to the p stars of the ligand. Okay, and the most intense band here, this is follows for the two complex, is a local centered charge transfer, but between only the paradigms, the paradigms. So about some conclusions, we have given some scientific contributions. The first, I believe, is the development of new non-bonded parameters for ruthenium atoms in different states of oxidation, oxidations 2, 3, and 4. The development of a sequential quantum mechanics, molecular mechanics protocol for the correct description of physical chemistry properties of ruthenium aqua complex in solution. We have described very well the ultraviolet visible spectra and also the XPS spectra. And we published an article in collaboration with the groups from, I'm not giving the names here, but it's many people, José Luis, Zaki, Thiago, Leandro, Gianni, many people involved in a very important project. Okay, now I am almost finished. I study about the electrochemistry of this complex, studying the redox potential and the pKa that are also very important properties to describe the electrochemistry involved in the water splitting process, and for future, making it possible to address fundamental questions related to complex proton-coupled electron transfer reactions, for instance, the electrocatalytic water splitting process. So thank you so much for your attention.
Questions?
Thank you for the talk. My question is about the experimental part, the methodology. The XPS spectra simulated come from DFT calculation?
Yes, yes, DFT.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask.
Yeah, using, I didn't say, but it was calculated using the Janak approximation.
On the beginning of your talk, you mentioned concern about this material, this system could be used to understand water splitting, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
On that case, how it is possible to, I'm not familiar with that particular class of materials. Could you provide some further information aligned with that?
Do you want to know why this kind of...
Yeah, for example, this material, for example, when you say there, this study, how is important to understand the process that happens for the water splitting?
Okay, as I started saying, this kind of ruthenium complex or iridium complex, they are able to make the water splitting. And there are three mechanisms. I showed only one that's based in a cell with electrodes and titanium dioxide. The principle is basically the create of a charge separation. And what this kind of ruthenium complex can do, after the excitation, the electron goes to a singlet state, but after this, it passes by a crossing internal system, and goes to a triplet state. And this triplet state is very stable. So we need a charge transfer state that are stable. then we can transfer this electron to a titanium dioxide electrode, for example. And in the process of the restoration of the electron that was promoted to the electrode, we have the oxidation of the water. And this oxidation can be directly done by the ruthenium complex, but you can also add to your solution another system that will be responsible for this, okay, as cerium, for example.
Thanks for the very nice presentation. Just as a perspective, do you already have any hint of a ruthenium-based system which is different from the works you've already published that could provide very efficient water splitting? Do you have any hint how to do that based on ruthenium?
Yes. Okay. The first ruthenium complex that was sensitized was the blue dimer. And we measure the efficiency of a ruthenium complex by a unit that we call tone. Okay. Just to exemplify for you, because the first sensitized compound was very poor, low efficiency. So the tone is the number of mole of substrate that a mole of the catalyst can convert before becoming activated. So answer your question. A very recent paper, look, 2014. It has increased a lot. We have large tone there. So depending of the solvent and depending of the molecular structure, you can have a very efficient compounds. Okay. I don't know. Yes. Just to simplify, okay.
Leandro, let me complement your
Okay.
answer to Juarez about the importance of this work. If you can put back in the experimental data, Professor Arnaldo de Brito, that comes from Division 2, density energies processes, they are developing this X-ray methodology to measure inoperandus reactions with water reduction. And they performed this experiment trying to use the XPS measurement in surfaces. And the point is that they have this result here, the red, black, blue, and the other blue spectrum. And they couldn't say each species are related to the peaks, because if you see peak 1, 3, and 8, they are in the same energy. So they know that they have the ruthenium 2, 3, and 4, but they don't know how to classify. And the theoretical calculation was unique to tell the experimental each peak should be related for each oxidation of the process. And with the continuum model and vacuum model, we couldn't describe this description only when we put the entire solvation shell. So for us was interesting to show that some very simplified models cannot describe the real process in the experiment, and only if you put the entire solvation shell. So then this was the challenge of this process, to help the experimental people to classify and to identify all the peaks that we only could do it with the theoretical calculations.
My concern with the question is more related to, I understand, I agree with you, that's very important to understand where and to identify what type of ruthenium or the state is involved in that reaction. But when you are looking at the water splitting, for example, this material can be what for the splitting, but you also should see also to to look the problem from different angles, also to look at the water splitting itself too, and then to go beyond it, really to go to water splitting directly. It's not only solvent effect. This is my main point here.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Wow, pretty nice. From my knowledge, I only find one work published with different parameters for ruthenium 2 and 3. So, yeah, let's stop.
Do we have more questions? It seems that's not the case, so let's thank the speaker once again.
Thank you.
And